about like vibe coding, right? Today you can use Gemini to vibe code things. I still think we need software engineers. I'm sure you have
I think so.
in your company a lot of like very good software engineers, and you're not gonna replace them soon with AI.
Hello, welcome to another podcast with In the Clouds with GMI Cloud. Today, my guest is Ron Mokady, who is the VP of Research at Bria.ai. They've recently come out with an open source 8 billion parameter model called FIBO. What it is an image generator. Now, why you might think this is a very interesting, just another image generation model, but if you spent any time with tools like Midjourney or Stable Diffusion, you understand the feeling that you type a prompt, you hit generate, and it feels like there's 30 different results that come out, and you're looking for that one thing that looks very, very close to what you want, except usually it's 90% of the way there, but there's that little small snag that makes it feel incomplete, and then you have to regenerate again in the hopes that the machine understands what you want. FIBO, based on my understanding, allows you to make very controllable edits and requests to make sure that when you get 90% of what you want, you can say, hey, let's modify this lighting, let's modify that angle, let's modify that light or that color. So to me, as a creative myself, this gives you a lot more control, and to professionals and enterprise, this gives you a lot of continuity and creative control over the final results. I think this is very interesting, and there's a little bit later about how FIBO was trained on licensed data, so there's no scraping of creative work. It pays royalties to artists. Totally interesting to me, and so glad to have Ron here. Glad to talk about this, Ron.
Thank you.
I'd love to just start with the basic question, which was why did you guys come up with this, and why did you start thinking, okay, we need to create something like FIBO?
Yeah, this is a great question. I started to work on visual Gen AI in my PhD before it was cool as now. So back then it was so difficult to generate images. And then things like, I think in the text to image era, this is the time when these models became so useful. I couldn't believe that actually generative models going to be something that everyone will use. But right now, when you play with a lot of the models, they're like amazing models. Like they're really, really good, but they're very, very good for casual users. And we notice that they're not exactly suitable for professionals. And there is a very different gap between our casual users and our professional users use this type of models. And you can think about like a professional photographer want to take a picture of anything, even if it's something simple like a dog on the grass. He care about composition, he care about lighting, he care about distance from the camera. And it's very, very different from text-to-image models where users just like typing a dog sitting on the grass, right? It's so fundamentally different. I feel that like using standard models today, it feels like really driving in a car when you cannot steer to the right. You can go only left or straight. So eventually you can get very far away, but you cannot get like to the exact location where you want to go. And this was the motivation of FIBO, enabling to professional think about something in her head and really generate the same thing. And we noticed that this difference is just because like textual description is a very sparse representation, unlike images which like they have so much details in it. So there is a large gap in the representation. And when you train models with such a big gap, there is a lot of biases in the model. There is a lot of assumption in the model. And instead, FIBO is actually the first open model trained with long structured captions. It means that we train it with captions which are more than 1,000 words per image, and they are actually structured in a JSON format. So in the training, like every sample have every aspect of image which you need to generate a cool image. And actually, the result of the model was even better than we expected, because because of this training, there was like a natural disentanglement of different factors. And now you can just like generate an image, and then you want to change something specific, and you can just change this thing. And it's very fun to play. I encourage you to visit our demo, which is very fun. And I know that today we have like editing models, which are also cool, but this model was never trained on a single pair of images. And still it has like a very disentangled representation. And actually FIBO it's like only the first step in our research path, because we understand there is a lot of additional ways to create much better controllability for this type of models. Like structured JSON, it's nice, but actually you can put in the caption things which are not words. So we're already working on putting additional control. I cannot say anything, but I can say you can put specific colors in X format. You can put bounding boxes, key points. You can put the distance from the camera. And then you can build like image generation models, which are much more controllable.
So at the end of the day, I work in marketing and in creative. So being able to say, "Hey, we want to do, turn this around or flip that over or generate this in a way that, maybe removes certain things." I've seen a few generations where for some reason, like they'll put in something from Disney and I'm just like, no, we can't do that. That's going to get us sued. So, but then the we generate 10 more and it doesn't look as good as the one that we need to fix. So I totally get that. So I see why, first of all, the problem you were trying to solve. And I've messed around with it yesterday just to take a look. And I think it gets the sense across. I think my next question is, do you think that currently every single model on the market is focused too much on trying to make things look good and not enough on control? And I've messed around with quite a few models so far. Flux, everything hosted on our inference engine and FIBO.ai. And if I'm being very honest, image generation is getting really good. A year ago, I was still looking for six fingers or some like weird blurs in a background, but we're at the point where that's probably not there, or the diminishing return of someone who's going to look for it. It's starting to take me maybe like 3 minutes to figure out if something is an AI. And that's 3 minutes too long for me to be spending to be figuring that out. So do you think that the future of image generation models is to give creators more control? Because at the end of the day, when I think about it, if there is something wrong with the resulting generation, having that additional control of saying, hey, this little box, this blur, let's fix that, or this finger looks wrong, let's just fix that, is significantly better and stronger than saying, let's generate something perfect from out of the box. Do you think that's true? Do you think that's the way things are going to go? Do you think that's where the market is and creators are going to demand things?
The way to create like better image generation models, it's pretty clear to everyone, right? You have
Mhm.
data, you have compute, obviously you know about compute, and you have the algorithm. And actually the algorithm is opposed to what people think is the least important factor. But if you can scale the data. And if you can scale the compute, you can get better and better models. You can get better quality and images looks more realistic, higher resolution. And we see this in the last year, right? Like the new Flux model is amazing. Banana is amazing at generating images. So I think in this sense, like the the research side of scaling up, it's pretty clear. It's very important, right? Because we want to have image generation at very high quality, obviously. But yeah, we want to focus on a different aspect, and is how we scale up the controllability of the models. And I think in this sense, we have a very interesting observations. One of them that if we zoom out, right, so we can design a new paradigm of how these models are working. So basically we have the user, which describe his intention, and then we use a couple of stages before an generation instead of what we have right now. Like what we used to have is just like user typing, we have text to image models, and we're done. Now we have different components. The first component is the reasoner. The reasoner understands what the user want to say. and translate it to intermediate language. Then the intermediate language is fed to what we call the renderer, which is the model that actually generating the image or the video. So the paradigm is that we have user to the reasoner to intermediate language to the renderer, and you get output. And if you think about it in this way, then there are a lot of new ways to interface with these models. You can take a lot of new intermediate languages that you can use actually for this type of models. You can think about intermediate language which are more similar to the old-fashioned rendering, like you decide where is the camera and you decide where is the object in the space. And you can think about intermediate language that fit like very specific use cases. And then basically, if you think about it this way, you can think about a lot of different ways to scale the controllability of these models. So I think in like the next 1 year, 2 year, we're gonna experience this model in different ways, which is different than now we just experience improving quality. But I think in the next 2 years, we will also get an improve in the controllability applications, the way we interact with these models. So I think it will be a lot of fun. And I think this is especially important for, again, for the professional use of these models. And I will not be happy until every image will be generated.
I like that, but I have a question as a creative, which is if the model is deterministic or you're trying to make it as deterministic as possible, does this kill off the possibility of happy accidents? If you know what I mean. Like sometimes I'll generate like 10 things and one of them will be completely not what I asked for, but it will look extremely good and it's a different direction that I was like, okay, I never thought of that. Let's try a few more iterations of that. Right. But if it's more deterministic, it's starting to sound like it's going to stick to what I asked for and won't give me any chances to see different ideas that I did not think about, which is what current, I guess, more chaotic generation does give me as an avenue.
Yeah, this is a very good question. I heard different artists actually they arguing about this. If you have an accident with an image generator, if this is art or not. It's a very philosophical question of what is art. So,
Right.
and in a sense, I'm on the side of people that think that actually, if you have a very deterministic model, but the user have like infinite control, it's more artistic than let the model hallucinate some happy accident. Because actually, as the model gets more deterministic, but with a lot of levers for control, you can actually get more diverse outputs. And actually, fun fact about FIBO is that FIBO like generalize outside of its training distribution much more than StarNet models. We train a lot of models at Bria, and maybe I didn't mention it, but we train all models from scratch. So yeah, we noticed that FIBO actually generalize better, and in a sense, it means that although it is more deterministic and more controllable, actually you can get more outputs more than it.
Okay. It's comes back to the idea of every brush is a good brush in the master painter's hand, right? Maybe. Earlier you said you trained your FIBO from scratch. What are some challenges that come from training large models from scratch?
Yeah. So
I'm curious because
it's
we have a lot
related
of.
it's related to what I've said earlier, but two challenges are compute and data. Because
Okay.
when you train from scratch, like you need to use a very diverse data and you need to control the distribution of the data, and it's a lot of data work. This is one thing. The other is obviously you need a lot of compute. I think we are actually pretty efficient in using compute at Korea, which I'm proud of it. Some people like to spend a lot of compute and building large clusters. Maybe it's good for you, but we try to be as efficient as possible. Also, our model is a bit smaller than competitors. We see it as advantage. We work with a lot of enterprises where cost is meaningful and small models are obviously more efficient. So we see the benefits of this. So yeah, things like getting a lot of compute and data, and also like when you train from scratch, because you need a lot of compute, like doing experimentation is getting more challenging because you have to do your experiments in some kind of sandbox
Mhm.
and cannot like perform a lot of experiments in large scale unless you work at Google or something. But uh, you have to know how to work in like small, like controllable environment, have a lot of experiments, and then scale it up to the large model. So you will be as efficient as possible.
This might be a weird question to ask, but are there things that teams with who pursue large compute can do that you can't do with efficiency?
I think obviously there, obviously you can make faster progress if you have more compute
Hmm.
because you can you can spend less time in optimizing things in a controllable manner, and you can just like scale up things
So they can
in a
just
crazy way. Yeah, let's have the biggest models as we can. Let's scrape the entire internet. Let's like do everything in input force. Obviously, there are advantage, but there is also like a ceiling of the advantage you can get out of it. Like it, if your data is not good enough, it doesn't matter how much compute. So maybe you can also improve your data with compute. So there are upsides, but I think we've seen like in recent years a lot of like small labs that create amazing models. They're not that small, right? Like Flux models are great. They're not Google on the other end, but just like this week, Runway released an amazing video model. Lightrix have an amazing video model. Um, so I think there is a room for different companies, different scales. But eventually, all companies will scale up their compute. Everyone will scale up their data to build better models. Like it's a very good recipe for success.
Okay. Earlier you mentioned Flux. They have a 12 billion model and FIBO is 8 billion. So did you guys settle on the 8 billion number, or is that like a Goldilocks zone for this is good enough for enterprise usage, but small enough to run on most compute demands?
We found 8 billion to be a very good size compared to our data distribution and the quality that we want to achieve and the efficiency of the model. So you consider these trade-offs and you try to find like the sweet spot for you, for us. Eventually, we want this model to be able to run on device. We want this model to be able to become a video model. So there are a lot of applications that benefits from smaller model. Obviously, compute is cheaper. You mentioned Flux, but like only like a few weeks ago, Flux 2 came out, and Flux 2 is 32 billion parameters with, I think, 24, if I'm not mistaken, billion parameters for the text encoder. And for comparison, ours is like 8 billion for the transformer of the image and like only 3 billion for the text encoder. So we did a lot of work to make it more efficient. I think that choosing this text encoder of only 3 billion parameters, it's a very clever choice because we were able to see that you get pretty similar performance with like 8 billion and 24 billion models. So yeah, it makes sense.
Hey, same results with the cheaper compute costs is definitely going to be a huge driver. So I was reading a bit about FIBO. One of the things that came up that made me pause was seeing WAN 2.2 VAE in the GitHub repo. And for a moment, I was like, am I reading the wrong repo? Because it's a video encoding architecture, right? So why did you guys choose to use a video encoding architecture in an image generator? Can you speak to that?
Sure. Actually, it's a very simple answer. One, it's actually a very good VA for images as well. So it's a good
Great.
choice. And the second, of course, it's always, I didn't mention it yet, but the model is open source, so everyone can use it.
Yes.
So as we open it, we want to have people the freedom to do with this model like whatever they want. And obviously, we want to let people try to make this model video
Mhm.
if they want and to train it further. So I think it makes sense to use a VAE, which will be able in the future to become a video VAE. So things will be easier.
So if it can do video in the future, does this mean FIBO is not purely 2D? It understands the image it's generating in a 3D space?
So at the moment, FIBO is like completely 2D. We will not sign on video, but obviously this is something that we're exploring. We work on different video applications for clients. Yeah, actually training video and images model and image models. It's nice that it's similar in a lot of ways. Obviously, training video models, it's much more expensive compute wise.
Mm.
But like a lot of the techniques are shared. And I think a lot of the things that we have done in FIBO, for example, using structured captions, are obviously relevant also for video models. And I believe we'll see this type of video models in the future.
Okay. Earlier you said open source, wonderful. Open source is always a gift to the community. I've worked on open source projects myself. They're great. At the end of the day, there's two questions though. One is, why would you choose open source it if the training costs are expensive, compute and getting the data and your work and everything? And B is, I guess, what's in it for Bria to open source such a great model?
Yeah. So I think that's like m- we work with enterprises. We're
Mhm.
not aiming for a consumer app. So we work with enterprises. Obviously, they have their own users, but we work with builders. We sell to builders. And this model is a very good building blocks for builders. We obviously, I'm also a builder. I'm also a researcher. When you're a researcher and builder, the most convenient way to get to know to a new model or a new technique is just using it and download it and play with it. Like open sourcing the model, it's part of our business plan. Just we open source the models for like non-commercial use, so people from the community can play with them, get inspired, do stuff, and researchers from academia can write papers about them. And obviously, if people want to use them commercially, so um, they contact us and we work together. Yeah,
Yeah, like us. We're going to deploy FIBO on GMI Cloud soon. We're trying to make that happen.
yeah, I'm
Um,
very excited about it.
I'm also pretty excited. I'm hoping it gets in time for us to do some Christmas generations with it, and our engineers are still working on it. And then one of the things that FIBO came out with is the a way to pay licensed creators or license holders for the use of their images in the generation. Can you go
Yeah,
how that works and how that furthermore how that like functions if someone is using it in an open source way? Because then there I'm not saying how, okay, where is the money coming from? How does it work? And how do, for example, photographers around the world make sure that it's working in the intended way, the correct way, and they're getting attributed correctly? Could you talk about that?
Yeah, this is also a very fun topic because Bria is the first company to deploy an active attribution model. So to understand the motivation for this, I think the motivation for this, um, the way I like to think about it is the way that like everyone downloaded music illegally at some point, right? Everyone used like Napster or Pirate Bay or whatever. And now everyone is using Spotify and they're paying Spotify. And I think it's the same about like using data, especially images of art. Like people right now just scrape the internet, take whatever they found, but it's not sustainable, especially when you think about like premium IP. Like obviously, if you will generate like Disney characters, you eventually will get sued, right? And everyone gets it. So the concept of attribution model is that basically for each generation, we just paying some cut to our data providers. And it's very simple. And we have an algorithm that check basically like it decompose the image, different factors, calculate similarity, and then we can get like what cut we need to pay for each vendor. And actually it works pretty well. And I hope like many companies um, will also want to participate in this model because it's like it's very sustainable, very easy, very friendly, and it works well also with the open source because we like just paying cuts from our paying customers, and our data providers understand it, and it makes a lot of sense. So, like, I don't know how things go with AI regulation. I'm not a lawyer, but I do hope that eventually we'll get like the freedom to generate anything, right? And to have copyrights. And this actually gets more important when you talk about like professional users. Like think about it. If you now generating an image and you want to put it in billboards all over the world, obviously you want to have the copyright for this image, right?
Yes. There's so many ways I can go with that. uh, I'm not a primarily I don't work with image. I work a little with video and I'm a writer with a book. So there's a lot of my own personal concern as a professional creative as to how my work is going to be used and scraped in the future, which might be like a whole different podcast topic if you ever want to come back on. The next question I'm curious about then is where did I write this down? So if FIBO, so one of the things FIBO has is inversion, which allows it to look at a photo, invert it back into, I guess the way I understand it is like a specific code or, number to basically recreate the image with the requested change, right? But this does in my mind, this allows FIBO to then look at almost any image or any movie still and just say, I know how to recreate this now. Does this mean that we've accelerated the possibility of, I guess, copying or stealing certain work styles and arts forms with FIBO? And do you see that being a problem in the future?
It's a very good question. First of all, you refer to what I call this feature inspire. Basically, you take an image, you convert it to a JSON,
Mhm.
and then you can take the JSON as input to the model as a structured prompt. So
Yeah.
it's not exactly using the image, but it get inspiration from an image. Obviously, you can use it for bad purpose, but I think when we talk about like a regulation, what's wrong, what's right, I like to have the differentiation of like user that's doing things which are wrong, like intentionally. For example, you can always take a photo of Disney to Photoshop and claim it as your own. This is wrong. But I think the fear of AI is that people would use copyrighted content like unintentionally. You would ask the model to generate a Christmas card and it will copy someone else's Christmas card. So I think in a sense that our focus is to have models which were trained right. Obviously, users can use them wrong, and also I can give a spoiler alert that FIBO will have an editing version very soon. It means that you can add it like any real image with FIBO and change like everything, and it's going to be an awesome editing model. The first editing model trained on licensed data. Uh,
Okay. I think that's a very fair answer because at the end of the day, as creators, we can't really choose what other people do with our stuff, and at the end of the day, we can't really lose sleep over it. Uh, I think, and going back to the additional creative control from FIBO, one of the things I've been telling people around me is that you need to learn how to use AI, not just the difference between someone who knows how to use AI and someone who just uh, taps into AI is very huge. The term prompt engineering. So
Yeah.
people who understand, like, for example, my interns, so they'll go straight to ChatGPT or Gemini and say, "Give me this in this way," whereas a more advanced user might say, "Hey, give me this. Here's the parameters I'm going to set for you. Here's what I want you to avoid. Here's the style I want you to mimic. Blah blah blah. All these things that you can describe." So as FIBO comes out, do you think we're going to start to see more a giant gap between I guess, artists and creators who understand very strictly how to control the AI for what they want, aka some like AI professional, versus the average layman or consumer who just types in, "Give me this, but with a different color or in a different background." I think that's
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that let's think about like vibe coding, right? Today you can use Gemini to vibe code things. I still think we need software engineers. I'm sure you have
I think so.
in your company a lot of like very good software engineers, and you're not going to replace them soon with AI. And I think similarly about like generating images or videos, it's okay to have like casual users that type like silly prompts and get silly results, but we also need professionals that can get like amazing stuff from these models and have the proficiency. And I think that one thing that's missing to have this type of professionals is to have like a unified language for this type of image models and video models. Like right now, everyone is training their own models with different languages. So we have like prompt engineering, which is different for each model. But if we will have something which is predictable, like programming languages, right? They're predictable, like Python. Everyone that use Python get the same results all over the world. This is amazing. I believe that eventually we'll have the same thing for images and videos. We'll have some kind of image generation languages that are predictable and everyone use it in the same way and you get the same results. And it will be, and then people will get to be experts because they will master these languages, which right now it's very different to master these tools. Obviously, there are like very talented people that can do better things. Also, I noticed that like people that are naturally gifted in the creative or have a lot of experience in creative are obviously better. For example, our head of creative generate much prettier images than me. And I'm in charge of like training these models. But he knows how to manipulate them better than me because he has like the touch, right?
Yeah, it's like NASCAR. The engineers who build the car are not the drivers.
Exactly.
I think one of the things that's interesting to me is the ability for FIBO to digest it as JSON. So, and the way, correct me if I'm like describing this incorrectly, user types in prompt gets translated initially to JSON, then the JSON is fed to the image generation, right? So there's that
Yeah.
little layer in between, which is currently effectively user talks to a bot that talks to the generator. Is that the best way to describe it?
Yeah, I wouldn't say a bot. We use like a
Or a
VLM.
translator?
Yeah, we use strong VLMs. We have two options. One, you can use like a closed VLM like Gemini, and the other, we just fine tune like an open source VLM so you can use it, which is also very effective. And this allows us to make it open source. Yeah, there is a need for translator because like, you know, this translator actually adds a lot of power to the model because there is now reasoning or knowledge. I think it make a lot of sense to me, and I feel that the most popular image and video models out there that people really love, obviously they're working in the same way. You can have like these little experiments and generating images and see how the model has its own like word knowledge that help him generate what you want. Yeah, I think actually it's very effective and it make a lot of sense.
Is that architecture relatively new to this space. I'm actually never looked into how Stable Diffusion and Midjourney work under the hood. So is this JSON
Uh,
translator new?
yeah, like our model is the first ever open source model that builds this way. Like even like I think newer model which can get JSON, but they can also get like a short description. Our model is the first that make it very, very clear that like only JSONs, no short prompts. And it's it's maybe difficult for some casual users, but we believe that it creates a better model. And we see this in the result of the model that it is smaller, but get the same prompt alignment of much larger models.
Yeah. I think that helps because at the end of the day, you don't want to confuse the AI model in the back end. And most people don't type in one of the things I constantly explain is the AI is smart. You're just really bad at explaining yourself to it. And then I think this definitely helps. So do you think this translation layer is going to be like the new architecture going forward as FIBO becomes successful and used in for this deterministic enterprise usage? Do you think other model research and providers are going to look at this and say, hey, that looks really cool. Let's see if we can learn anything from it. Is this the next direction of image generation? AI is basically the question.
Yeah, definitely. Again, like I mentioned at the early beginning, like I think the new paradigm, it will be like user reasoner, intermediate language, and a renderer. And like these models will become like a renderers that controlled by agents, reasoners, all type of very smart models. And the combination of a very strong renderer and a very good reasoner will allow us to build like amazing applications. We can barely understand how amazing it will be, but it will get pretty cool in the just next few years. Like also this type of architecture really allows you to scale things up very, very easily.
Yeah. I mean, if it's this good at 8 billion parameters, I can't imagine what the architecture would do with 32, right? That would be probably even more incredible. Do you have any hot takes on the future of image and video generation?
Yeah, as I said, like I think the path is very clear. Things will scale up, models will get better and better, and as models will get better and better, people will focus more on controllability and interfaces and how we use these models and how we use these models for like very specific applications. Like right now, everyone is focused on the image quality and to get people with 5 fingers, but then now people will start asking more question. Like it's not only capability of generating high quality images, it's a question of what image do you want to generate? How we can generate an image which will create an impact? How can we generate an image that people would like? Images that will be artistic. And there is so much things to explore in this field, which is incredible. This is why I really love this field and the possibilities. And
Well, what is your next research direction then? What's got you curious? What keeps you up at
yeah, so yeah, so like I said, we work very hard on controllability. We want to think about what will be like new, very useful user interfaces to control images. Because like actually a text, it's not a very useful way to control an image. Like images are not built for text. Think about you want to move things like a few pixels left in the image. It's very weird to use text for this. So I think like we want to build models that people can use, new brushes, as we discussed, like a new type of brushes, new capabilities, new interfaces. This is our focus. I cannot say too much because work is in progress. GPUs are working hard right now as we speak.
I'm excited. I think
Yeah.
I understand it, even though the way I relate to it is slightly different as a writer. The way I primarily, display my work is through text. And if this might not make sense but it's a weird analogy. I write my work and if I'm telling a story, and someone is just reading what I've put down on paper, their brain is the video generation for the story I'm telling them, right? But I don't know, every person's mental brain is a different generator in a certain way. They have a different imagination. They might be more focused on color, they might be more focused on just the dialogue. Some people Dialogue is a very interesting aspect. Some people have the sub-vocalization to hear it in their head, some people don't. So there's various things I also have to consider when I'm thinking, okay, how do I present this? And that little translation mechanism is something that I think every writer intuitively kind of understands they need to struggle with, but is something that, you know, even though we've been reading and writing for a few thousand years, most writers are not very good at doing, especially and we're still developing new techniques, such as, as something as simple and as a bold text or larger text or smaller text or italics drastically changes how, the same sentence can be read for different people. So I think definitely if it's this hard for me as a writer, it's definitely way harder for you as a researcher who's like, okay, how do I get this AI model that we're not even sure if it can think to understand what someone is trying to tell it, when it's like, okay, I want you to generate this thing in a certain color on a certain background in a certain angle, maybe at a certain time of day, and it has to process all that. So I think that's a very different, interesting thing that you're trying to solve. We're coming up on time. Is there anything you would like to, let the audience know, or something you think you want to give us as food for thought, that, like, for example, what you're aware of that the public is not generally thinking about, or something you think is coming soon but creatives have not prepared themselves for?
Yeah, I think that one topic we didn't discuss is the evaluation of such models. And I
Ah,
think here there is a very large gap because like most of people like evaluate these models on like the arena, the notorious arena. And the arena basically is a couple of people just rating images using very simple prompts. And then you get like a table which looks like I don't know, you can choose your favorite sport, but it looks like a table of like sports team, and each time there is a different team at the first place, and it gets really funny. Like the CEO of Google is cheering Google for getting the first place in the arena, but actually, when you think about the arena, what is the meaning of the arena? The meaning of the arena, for example, in images, it's just if you win the arena, it basically means you optimized your model for the average user preference. And you can think about it because this is what the arena is measuring,
yes.
average user preference. And like, it's not such a big of a deal to have best user preference because there is so much other things we can do with this model. And I think it's very weird to measure impact of this model with like average user preference. One thing we've done, hopefully to improve it, we suggest a new evaluation method when you actually measure the expressiveness of the model. So
Is that
basically, it's very simple. Yeah, exactly. We
text
call
as
it like
bottleneck something? I can't
text is
remember.
bottleneck. Yeah,
Yeah.
so you can take a real image, describe it using only text in this case, and then reconstruct the image using only text with your model. And this actually measure the expressiveness because as your model is more expressive, it will be able to create like random images using text. And I think like this is like only one way to think about evaluation, but definitely we have a lot of way to go with evaluation and measuring the impact of these models. Like the arena it's a very cute game to use the arena, but it's a very bad way to measure the impact of such models and the creative applications you can create with them. Like, it's very shallow evaluation, especially when you enter the arena and you see like the prompts are using. It's very basic. So if you want to have the best basic model, you can win the arena. But if you want model that solve a lot of use cases, um, you need other kind of evaluations. And I don't mean to say that models are bad. On the opposite, we have amazing models today. Almost every company has like very, very good model, which is incredible. We live in an amazing time. But yeah, I think there is a room to think about evaluation and what we want to achieve, because eventually evaluation will direct where we are going. There is a lot of stories of people that working in a big companies that they only care about the first place in the arena. And it means that they will work on this model to get the first place. And if we want to have like diverse set of models that solve a lot of use cases, we need to find more ways to evaluate them.
And Tapper is the only good evaluation protocol, you think? Are there other evaluation protocols besides Arena and Tapper?
No, I don't think our evaluation protocol is necessarily the best. I think we just want to inspire people to think about new metrics. I think that like text to image can be measured on a lot of things. You can measure the quality of the image. You can measure the quality of textures. You can measure expressiveness using Tabber. You can measure prompt alignment. And I think like measuring a lot of different metrics and also measuring like specific use cases, like creating ads, for example, or like editing specific stuff as we'll get more like thorough evaluation, which will be diverse, we'll get also better models eventually.
Okay, so we have an evaluation protocol, and you're hoping that this space gets thought about more with how people are evaluating model generation and control. Oh, here's a question. What's something that's not your research that you're excited about in this space?
This is a very good question. I'm excited about everything, so it's very, very. I think something that really excited me is if we just talk about evaluation. I think the evaluation is also a very big problem of LLMs, because also LLMs are optimized for the average user preference, right? You put your image and you ask the model, how do I look? And the model said, you look charming as always. It's because the model is optimized to be so flattering. And I'm very excited. I'm, I'm very optimistic that we'll get some LLMs that will be more neutral and they will be honest, and it will unlock many other things that you can do with these models. For example, a lot of the professional use of these models right now, you have to fine tune them because they're not honest. But I think that honest AI models, honest LLMs, will be very useful tools. Obviously, people don't do it for a reason, but I think eventually it will get there, and then these tools will be even more useful as it now.
Here's a philosophical question. Do you think people prefer honesty?
I think this is exactly the difference between casual users and professional users. Casual users, they don't want honesty. They want to be flattered. But professional users, they need honesty.
You'd think that, but at the end of the day, professional users are still human in my mind and still fallible to human problems, right? So maybe I tend to agree with you, but at the end of the day, I still think professional users are still a little weak at times. But I think that was a great answer. I think we're definitely coming close to our hour. Definitely love I think my final question to you is, what advice do you have to any aspiring researcher or someone who's looking to build their own image generation model?
Building their own image generation. Yeah, I think you should not build your own image generation model, basically.
Okay,
Okay.
let's say fine tuning on top of FIBO then.
Actually, today, like fine-tuning this model, it's so easy. It's crazy. Like in like 10 years ago, people have to work so hard to get like some repo and like get the code and install everything. Now, like you can fine tune models with a few lines of code. So It's very easy. I think my take on this is data. Like data is the most important factor. Choose carefully your data and
Hmm.
fine tune it well. I'm also very excited about the fine tuning of editing models because I think it's unlock a lot of new possibilities. Also, I think FIBO also like should suggest like a new type of editing of fine tuning that people will fine tune models to get more control. Like you have some kind of control in your mind. You want to control like the exact type of camera used for an image. So I think people will start like fine tuning models to get like new kinds of control. And this will be super fun. Yeah.
So I could fine tune FIBO to say only generate in tilt shift photography style.
Yeah.
That's a pretty easy fine tune? Okay. Man, I'm gonna see if I can find time to play with it this weekend. All right. I think that's all my questions. Thank you, Ron. I appreciate your time. Have a wonderful evening. And Ron Mokady, Mokady, sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Thank you for having me. It was really fun. Hope to see our model in your cloud very recently.
I'm thinking we get it by tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it.
Mm. Tomorrow is
I'm
great.
hoping. Fingers crossed, but engineers hate it when I promise a timeline, so I'm gonna not promise a timeline.
Of course.
All right. Let me just